Hello students, today we will discuss about the interior of anal canal. Now when you will see the interior of anal canal, you have to understand that this interior has been divided into the three parts. So we will discuss all the three parts of anal canal. So what are these three parts? First is known as upper part of the anal canal, then the second is known as middle part of the anal canal and the lower part of the anal canal. Now my dear students, when you are reading the book, you will find these three parts, but actually you have to understand that when you will see the development, this is actually the two parts. One is the upper part and second is the lower part. And this lower part is further divided into the two parts, middle part and lower part. Clear? So the first thing which you have to understand that when you are seeing the interior of anal canal, you will find the three names: upper part, middle part and lower part. But actually there are only two parts, upper part and lower part, and this middle part is actually known as transition zone, and these two parts are having the same embryological development, and this is upper part is having the different embryological development. Now this uppermost part is 15 mm long, this middle part is 15 mm long and the lowest part is 8 mm in length. These areas are divided by the two lines, pectinate line and Hilton's line or white line of Hilton. Now in this image, if you will see the interior of anal canal, when you will cut the anal canal longitudinally, what you will find that this is your anal canal. Now in this portion of the anal canal, we will divide this into the two portions. One is your upper part. So this is your upper part. Now this is your upper part and the remaining is the lower part. Now this lower part is further divided into the two parts. This is your middle portion and this is your lowest part of anal canal. So in this way you will have the three parts, first part upper, middle and lower, but actually the dentate line or pectinate line is the line of demarcation between the upper and lower part, and this lower part is further divided into the two parts by one more line, that is the white line of Hilton. Clear? So let's see one by one all these three parts. So what are the features of the upper part? Now upper part is known as mucus part. Why mucus part? Because it is lined by the mucosa. Now this is lined by the mucosa, and the most important thing is that it is endodermal in origin. Now this is what you have to understand, that when you will have the intra-embryonic development of gut tube, the lowest part of the gut is known as cloaca, and the urorectal septum which develops in the cloaca divides the cloaca into the hindgut, and you will have anteriorly the urinary system. Now that hindgut which is posteriorly present into the cloaca is endodermal in origin, and that part of your terminal part of the hindgut is going to form the anal canal. So anal canal develops from this uppermost part is from endoderm. Clear? Not the whole length. Now see, this is the question of your exam, that what is the embryological development of anal canal. So we are talking basically about the mucosa, and the upper part mucosa develops from the endoderm, which is actually coming from the cloaca, and cloaca is a lowermost part of your gut tube. Clear? Now this area is limited below by a line is known as pectinate line. Now what is the pectinate line? Now when you will see the interior of the anal canal, in interior of anal canal you will have the lower line, and this lowermost line is known as pectinate line. Clear? Now this part which is above the pectinate line is the uppermost part of your anal canal, which develops from endoderm. Now the area below this blue line is your lower part, and that lower part I told you further divided into the middle portion or transition zone and lowermost part. Now what are the important features which you will have in exam related to the upper part of anal canal? So the first and important feature is the presence of longitudinal anal columns, and these are known as columns of Morgagni. These are longitudinally placed columns, and these are 6 to 10 in number. When you will see the number, they are 6 to 10 number. These are vertically placed. These are permanent folds. Now these permanent longitudinal folds which are present in the upper part of the anal canal is known as anal column of Morgagni, which you can appreciate in this diagram that here is the longitudinal columns which are the anal columns of Morgagni. Clear? Now the important thing is that these anal columns contains the radicals of superior rectal vein. Now this superior rectal vein is one of the tributary of portal system. In portal hypertension, these are the sites of primary internal piles above the pectinate line. Now this is something is important, and it is a very commonly asked question in exam, that what is the internal piles and what is the external piles. Now you have to understand that internal piles is the dilatation or varicosities of the vein above this pectinate line, and these veins which will dilate in these areas, or you can say in the columns of Morgagni's, are actually going to form your piles which are highly placed in the anal canal. So they are known as higher piles, they are known as internal piles, and these piles develops because of the portal hypertension. And why in the portal hypertension the piles develop in this area? Because these areas are having the superior rectal vein, which is one of the tributary of portal vein. So what is the important thing in this slide? The first thing is that the uppermost part of the anal canal develops from the endoderm, which is coming from the cloaca. Second thing is that it is lined by the mucosa. The third thing is that the uppermost part is above the pectinate line. The fourth thing is the features. In the features, the first feature is the longitudinal columns of Morgagni. These are the anal columns which are 6 to 10 permanent longitudinal folds, and these folds contains the radicals of superior rectal vein. Now the second feature of the upper part of anal canal is anal valve of Ball or the valve of Ball. Now when you will see the longitudinal columns, the lower end of these longitudinal columns unites and with each other by short transverse fold of the mucous membrane, and these fold are known as anal valve. Now if you will see in this image where you will find the anal valve. So these are the anal valve which are actually connecting the adjacent anal columns, and these anal valves are mucous membrane. These are the folds of mucous membrane, but they are horizontally connecting the longitudinal placed pipes, or you can say the columns. So longitudinal columns are the columns of Morgagni, and the horizontal connection between the longitudinal columns is known as anal valve. Now above the each valve there is a depression, and that depression is known as anal sinus. So whenever you will have the valve, above the valve you will find the depressions, and these depressions are known as sinuses. Then you will have the pectinate line or dentate line. Now what is this pectinate line? Now this is a question of your exam. Define the pectinate line or dentate line. Now whenever you have this question, you have to define it in only one single line, that the anal valve together form a transverse line, and this line runs all around the anal canal, is known as pectinate line. So here if you will see, these are the longitudinal columns, and if I will join all the columns from their lower end, you will find a line. Now this line is known as dentate line or pectinate line. So what is pectinate line? It is a lower limit of uppermost part of the anal canal, or you can say it is a lower limit of the longitudinal columns of Morgagni. Now this line is having very important position, that it lies opposite the middle of internal anal sphincter. Now here in this image you can see that this is the internal anal sphincter, and at the middle of this internal anal sphincter you will find this pectinate line inside the anal canal. Clear? So the position of this pectinate line defines the middle part of your internal anal sphincter, and I already told you that pectinate line is a main line of demarcation between the upper part and the lower part of the anal canal. So it is a demarcation between the endodermal and ectodermal parts of the anal canal. What does it mean? That this portion is develops from the endoderm, and this portion below the pectinate line develops from ectoderm, and this lower portion is further divided into the middle and lower part. Now, the next feature is anal papilla. Now, what is anal papilla? It is a occasional finding, it is never constant finding, and these papillas are free margins of the anal valve, shows the epithelial projections. So, when you will see the anal valve, sometimes you will find some small epithelial projections, which may present, may not be present, and if they are present, they are just showing the remnants of anal membrane. Clear? Now, the next is anal glands. Now, anal glands are important to understand because these glands are the site of anal abscesses, and if the anal abscesses will rupture, they will lead to the fistula in ano. So, what are the anal glands? These are the, when you have the anal sinuses contains the anal gland. So, where is the anal sinus? Now, this is the anal column, and between the columns you will have the depressions, and these depressions are known as anal sinuses. Inside the sinuses you are having the openings of anal gland, and these anal gland secretes a peculiar smell fluid. There is a secretion which give a peculiar smell, and it is helpful to attract the opposite animal in case of the lower animals. But the important thing in the human beings that in case of the constipated persons, when the hard stool is there, what will happen? There is a repeated trauma occurs in these mucosal areas of the anal canal, and that site of the trauma will causes the infection, and that infection will lead to the infected anal glands. And once the gland will become infected, they will lead to the formation of abscesses around the perianal regions. Now, what about the middle portion? The middle portion, as I already told you, it is a transitional zone, and it is also known as pectin. It is a transitional zone, and it is also known as pectin. And this is the next 15 mm area of the anal canal. And I already told you that this is your dentate line or pectinate line, and the area lies below the pectinate line. So, this area lies below the pectinate line. But there is a one more line. Now, this is known as white line of Hilton. Now, this white line of Hilton is dividing this whole area into the two parts. Now, when you will have the further division, now this is your middle part or the transition zone, and this is the lower part, or you can say the lowest portion of your anal canal. Now, these two areas, now this is the one area and this is the second area. Now, these both areas are ectodermal in origin, but these areas are divided further into the two part. One is this middle portion and one is this lower portion. Now, what is the demarcation between these two? Answer is this white line of Hilton. Clear? So, this white line of Hilton is a line of lower limit of the transition zone. So, whenever you are talking about the limit of transition zone, it is below the pectinate line, but above the white line of Hilton. Clear? So, this is the most important MCQ for your exam, that which area lies below the pectinate line, but above the Hilton's line. Answer is your transition zone. Now, this region referred to as a transition zone, and this area is also lined by the mucosa, but the important difference is that this area does not have any kind of permanent folds. That means it is having no anal columns. Anal columns are the characteristic feature of upper part of anal canal. The middle portion does not have any kind of anal column. The mucosa of this region is bluish in color. What is the color of the mucosa? Bluish in appearance. Why? Because of the presence of underlying dense venous plexus. Because of the presence of underlying dense venous plexus. So, what are the three things from this slide? The first thing is the transition zone lies below the pectinate line, but above the Hilton's line. Second thing, this area is also lined by the mucosa, but this mucosa will not show any kind of the fold. That means it is smooth, there is no anal column. And third, it is bluish in color because of the dense underlying venous plexus. Now, apart from that, when you will see the middle portion, you will find the mucosa of the middle portion is less mobile. Now, why it is less mobile? Because it is adherent to the underlying structure. So, the mucosa of the upper part is more mobile, and mucosa of the middle portion of the transition zone or below the pectinate line is less mobile because it is adherent to the underlying structures, and it is lined by the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Now, see, you have to understand this thing, that the area which is above the pectinate line is developing from endoderm. So, this part of the mucosa is lined by a simple columnar epithelium. But when you will go below this, you will find that this area develops from ectoderm. So, epithelium is non-keratinized stratified squamous in this transition zone. Not in the lowermost, we will see the lowermost part, but when you will see below the pectinate line, the epithelium is different, above the pectinate line, the epithelium is different. Now, what do you mean by the white line of Hilton? Now, you have this question again and again in Viva. What is the dentate or pectinate line and what is the white line of Hilton? So, what is pectinate line? It is a lower limit of the upper part where you will have the horizontal line which is formed by the joining of all the lower ends of columns of Morgagni. What is white line of Hilton? Now, the lower limit of the transition zone or pectin is often has a whitish appearance because of that this is known as white line of Hilton. And this white line of Hilton lies at the level of the interval between the subcutaneous part of external anal sphincter and the lower border of internal anal sphincter. Now, this is most important line. Now, here we will see this. Now, this is our internal anal sphincter. So, this is the lower limit of internal anal sphincter. Clear? Now, this is the external anal sphincter. Now, this external anal sphincter is having the lowest part is known as subcutaneous part that lies below the perianal skin. So, this is the subcutaneous part. Clear? So, now here you can see there are two sphincters. This is the internal anal sphincter and this is the lower limit of internal anal sphincter. Now, below the internal anal sphincter, you will have the subcutaneous part of external anal sphincter. Now, in between them, there is a junction, and at this level, inside the anal canal, you will find the white line of Hilton. So, this white line of Hilton is present at a groove between the two sphincter that is known as intersphincteric groove. So, intersphincteric groove demarcated which line inside the anal canal? Pectinate line or white line of Hilton? Answer is white line of Hilton. If you remember, I just told you that pectinate line lies on the middle part of this, internal anal sphincter. Now, in this area, you can see that these are the lower border of your columns of anal canal, and if you will join all these things, you are going to form the dentate line. Clear? And this dentate line is at the level of middle of this internal anal sphincter. But when you will go below, what you will find below, that in the lower portion, there is a subcutaneous part of external anal sphincter. And the gap between external anal sphincter and the lower border of internal anal sphincter is known as intersphincteric groove, and inside that same level you will find the white line of Hilton. And this white line of Hilton is dividing this part again into the two part, pectin and the lowermost part of the anal canal. So, what is the limitation of your pectin or the transition zone? Above you will have the dentate line and below you will have this white line of Hilton. Clear? Now, come to know about the white line of Hilton. That white line of Hilton is a line of demarcation between the lower border of internal anal sphincter and the subcutaneous part of external anal sphincter. And second thing is that white line of Hilton is a lower limit of the pectin or the transition zone. Now the second and most important thing is that the pectin or the transition zone is lined by the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. And when you will see this non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium of the pectin, it is devoid of any sweat gland. You don't have the sweat gland in this part. Now, what about the lowermost part of your anal canal? The lowermost part of the anal canal is only 8 mm long and it is lined by the true skin. Now, this is something is important to understand that I already told you the area below the pectinate line, that means the middle portion and this lower portion both develops from ectoderm. But what is the difference between the lowermost part and the middle portion? The first difference is that the middle portion is 15 mm long, this is 8 mm long. The second difference is that the area above the white line of Hilton, that means the middle portion is having lining of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, while this lowermost part is lined by the true skin. And because it is lined by the true skin, it is having the sebaceous gland. The epithelium of the lowest part is resembles the pigmented skin in which you have the sebaceous gland, you have the sweat gland, you have the hairs. Clear? It shows corrugated appearance. Now, when you will have the perianal skin, you will find there are multiple folds are present which are known as corrugated appearance of the skin, and it is because of the presence of corrugated cutis ani muscle. Now, this corrugated cutis ani muscle is derived from the longitudinal muscle layer of the rectum. Now, here if you will see, what you will find that when you will have the longitudinal muscle layer, now this is the longitudinal muscle layer. Now, this longitudinal muscle layer will send the septas, and these septas will go and insert on the skin around anal area. And these septas are also having the muscle fibers, and these fibers are known as corrugated cutis ani muscle. So sometimes you will have this question, why perianal skin is having multiple corrugation? The only answer is corrugated cutis ani muscle. Clear? Then you have one more point. What is the difference in the different parts of the anal canal? So the upper and lower part are different in terms of the development, in terms of the blood supply, nerve supply, lymphatic drainage, and I just told you that if you will have the anal canal, you first divide the anal canal into the two part, and this line is known as pectinate line, this is known as upper part, this is known as lower part. Now, this lower part is further divided into the two part by the white line of Hilton. This is known as middle portion and this is known as lower portion. Clear? So, in this way you will have the three parts of the anal canal. This upper portion develops from the endoderm, while this portion develops from ectoderm. So, what are the difference? Now, difference comes from the pectinate line reference. So, you will have this question, what is the pectinate line and its importance? So, when you will have the importance of pectinate line, you will find that the development above the pectinate line is endodermal, below the pectinate line is ectodermal. Now, the area of the anal canal which develops below the pectinate line is known as proctodium. Clear? So, this is the question of your exam. What is proctodium? So, proctodium is a depression into the lower part of ectoderm, and that is going to form your anal canal below the pectinate line. Now, there is a difference in the blood supply. The area above is supplied by superior rectal artery, while the area below the pectinate line is supplied by inferior rectal artery. Now, you know that superior rectal artery is a continuation of inferior mesenteric artery, and we know that inferior mesenteric artery supplies the derivatives of hindgut. Clear? So, because it is supplying the derivatives of hindgut, it develops from the cloaca, which is actually the lowermost part of the hindgut. Below, you will have the supply from inferior rectal artery, which is a branch of internal pudendal artery. Now, we will see the venous drainage. Now, when we will talk about the venous drainage, the area above the pectinate line drain into the portal system by the superior rectal vein. superior rectal vein become the inferior mesenteric vein that will further enter into the portal system. Below, the veins will enter into the systemic vein with the help of inferior rectal vein. Now, when we will talk about the lymphatic drainage, now this is again very important question for your exam. You have to understand that area of the anal canal above the pectinate line drain into the internal iliac group of lymph node, while the area below the pectinate line drains into the superficial group of inguinal lymph node. Now, this question has been asked so many times in your multiple choice question that the perianalis area of the anal canal drain into which lymph nodes. So, you have to understand that the lowermost part of the anal canal, pectinate area, transitional zone and lowermost area drain into the superficial group of inguinal lymph nodes. Lastly, about the nerve supply, the area which is above the anal canal, pectinate line of anal canal supplied by autonomic nervous system. That's why you have to understand that internal piles or hemorrhoids above the pectinate line are painless because they are having the supplied of autonomic nervous system. But below the pectinate line, if you will have the hemorrhoids, they are very painful. Why? Because they are supplied by the somatic nerves. Clear? So, these are the some very important differences on the basis of this line of demarcation which is known as pectinate line. So, now at the end of this session of internal anal canal, you are able to understand what do you mean by the three different areas of anal canal, how will you divide the superior, middle and inferior part of the anal canal. The uppermost part is endodermal in origin, the lower part is ectodermal in origin, and lower part is further divided into the transition zone and the lower part, and you have to understand that how will you divide what is pectinate line and its importance, what is the white line of Hilton. Clear? So, when you will see the white line of Hilton, it is intersphincteric groove, it demarks the intersphincteric groove. Clear? So, this is all for today's class. Thank you.